I'm so embarrassed that I once ever thought about taking my own life. The memory is still vividly clear of me seeing my mom pained over in unfathomable agony. Her child is gone. And even as I saw her crippled to the ground, eking out a sound that shudders to the earth's core, I was numb to it, to her, to the world, to my sense of self. I cared more about stopping my daily agony and feeling of being nothing. I just wanted badly for the pain to disappear. And so, at 14, I thought the world would be better without me. This is Crack This Shit Open, a story podcast about coming into who you are while accepting the things you cannot change. I'm taking you back to spring of 1992. The backdrop is the Rodney King trial, the simmering racial tensions, and the moments I experienced before the riot eruptions. A deeply troubled teen, I was considering suicide for the first time. Anger permeated my city and ravaged through me at the same time. It was incensed, fire crackling like it was about to take over. And then, like my city, I had had enough. This is Downward Spiral. Hi, I hope you are enjoying this experience. I would like to prepare you for this chapter. You will hear two parallel stories in this chapter. One, the backdrop, describes the 1992 LA riots and its impact on me as a child. The other, the main story, walks you through a series of flashbacks throughout 1992 and leads you to the moment I decide to teeter with suicide. There was an eeriness in the air, an uneasy stillness after the verdict was read out loud in that courtroom. I remember a look on my mother's face, with wide eyes and furrowed brows, of concern and loss, as she looked at my father rushing for the door. As I watched her focus on him, the big screen TV in our living room continued playing in the background. Rodney King was fighting for his life, under the barrage of swings and foot kicks. Thud, crack, thud. Each blow resonated through the Black community, like a slap of fresh leather belt on the skin. Miles away, safe in my living room, I felt it. My mother felt it. My dad felt it. We all did. There were no words necessary, no explanations needed. In that moment, LA's Black community was living the pain we all knew instinctively. We knew it like we knew the old slave master whipping the slave, whose blood dripped into the tiny grooves of the blackest soil fibers. We knew it like we knew the young 14-year-old Mississippi boy, Emmett Till, who was pummeled and beaten until disfigured, laying to rest in an open casket. That was 1955. We knew it like the young 15-year-old Los Angeles girl, Latasha Harlins, who was brutally shot by a Korean corner store owner. That was 1991. Everyone knew it watching Rodney King's beating on TV, because it was nothing new. Though I was 14, I was quite observant and quick to sense what was going on around me. I knew that moment. The beating was another notch on a historic leather belt of despair and communal punishment. And that was significant. On that day, it marked my understanding that this was the world I was a part of. It was my world. And that day, Rodney King, as the others, had to pay a cost. The Black race in my hometown community could do nothing but witness an act We were in no position to stop. All we could do was stand there and cry and rage and plead for it to stop. All the while, just like the other times, we were left to watch. It is the lowest point in my adolescence years. No one understands me. Everything is building that year, hotter and hotter, like pressure in a boiler ready to burst. On that day, I decide to act and take in my life. I am growing in anger, just hot. 2 boys in my class laugh in a way that stays with you for a long time. It is sharp and echoes in my mind, as haunting in a moment as it would prove to be years later. The boys in class taunting and teasing, laughing. Then the others would laugh. Even a teacher couldn't hide her smirk. Holding my breath, silent. I am the butt of the joke. It wasn't the first time. But this moment, breaks me. And their laughter, that goddamn laugh, becomes the match, sets everything ablaze. I broke apart and thought to carry a choice I might forever live with. I abruptly leave the classroom door, the laughter bouncing, clanging on the lockers. I needed air. I needed quiet. I needed peace. I didn't care about the consequences. I left. Leaving the school ground, I passed through an unlocked gate. I'm under the trance of a steady voice inside, promising, it can all be over. Just do it already. Feeling the hot, hazy afternoon air, I find myself blocks away from my school. On Wilshire Boulevard, I stood, staring at passing cars and listening to the voice in my head. No one will ever know, or care for that matter. Two years before my blow-up. My childhood view of the world started to crumble in 6th grade when puberty hit. That was 1990. Crucial time. The unwitting catalyst for my blow-up in 1992. The taunts and jeers first started when I was 12. That's when I felt the piercing sting of bullying. Me, not sticking up for myself, just laid the groundwork for it to continue. It was like "pick on me" was stamped on my forehead and back. And boy, did the kids take advantage of that, my insecurity, and they latched on like a shark to blood in the water. So I was on the playground playing football. I remember that day clearly. I was called a word that I hadn't heard at that point yet. A word that would hunt me, cling to me, for the rest of my life, cowering from it. I didn't know what that word meant as the kids taunted me in tandem, screaming, poking me, pulling my hair that day. As the jagged, sharp edges pierced me with each hurling of the word, followed by laughter. I knew that word was bad. And as I shrunk and pleaded for them to stop calling me a name, I had no idea of its meaning. My classmates became more emboldened and motivated to chant louder and louder until I shrunk, smaller and smaller. My voice fell mute. My chin plunged straight into my chest and my eyes locked on the ground. I sulked. When I went home, I asked my mom about it to explain to me this word that was hurled at me like a blunted stick. I wanted to know how it became this thing that others could so easily define about me. My silence had only given others more power to smother me in a cloak of that word. I ran to my mom to save me from the torment I had just suffered, to reassure me that I was not that word or the ill feelings it made me feel. But that never happened. What I failed to remember was that I was in a traditional Black home, and certain topics, like sex and sexuality, were taboo and would never be discussed. That day I breached the contract. And when I uttered that word to my mom, because I wanted to know what it meant, and if it were bad, and if I were bad, I was met with a fire battery of angry questions. What did you say? Don't you ever say that word in the house again. I knew I wanted no part of that word. Try so hard to be good, and that word, if nothing else, was not good. There was no way I could be a lesbian.
Hammered.
Tensions continue.
LAPD.
Not guilty.
Captured on video.
Theodore Bracino.
We the jury.
These people lit the fuse to a bomb.
People think the riots just all of a sudden happened. What they don't know is the pressure had been mounting for years. King's incident was just the last straw, and the people erupted. My dad's back was turned from the TV. He moved suddenly and frantically rushed out of the house. My mother grabbed my arm and we followed. He was already climbing into the old white Ford pickup truck, the TV inside still looping the beating. As I stopped a few feet away from the truck, unable to move anymore, I could see the garden hoses. They were everywhere. Each neighbor, so desperate to save their homes, was dousing their rooftops. As I saw water droplets arc up and down the street, coating the black covered roofs, I remember my neighbors' faces. I knew them. I've been in their homes and ate at their dinner tables hundreds of times, sharing laughter and exchanging conversation. They were my extended family. And here, water sputtering down the roofs, but it was not enough to abate the mounting fear we were all feeling. That same fear that was in my mother's eyes and the same sense of urgency that moved my dad out the house so fast was in each of my neighbors' eyes and body language. As I looked up and down the street, into the skyline, toward the billows of dark smoke that curled in the air, choking the bright blue sky around it, there was another and another. I turned to my neighbors' homes, my home, and everywhere I could see, there were billows of dark smoke across our city skies. My mother called for me to get in the truck. As I turned to climb in, I noticed my dad's logo detailed on the side paneling, Potter's Plumbing. It was a small thing to notice, not as important as the hoses or the smoke or the loop play police beating on the television, but it still struck me. My mother's voice became louder, angrier, even frantic. Let's go, Shay. Get in. We need to go. Put your seatbelt on. It is a few weeks before the LA riots. This particular Sunday, I'm sitting in the church and listening to the fire and brimstone assertions. I'm listening to the pastor's warnings, the ones that spoke of death and sin as similes. I feel as if he were directly talking to me. Am I guilty? I know Sebastian and all that he represents is wrong, unnatural, sinful, so I must keep him to myself. I found the tiniest box inside of me and shoved Sebastian in as best I could. Unfortunately, boxes have limits, right? Sitting there in the pews, my heart races. My mom presses my hand, looks at me, and smiles. Did she know? Is she softly communicating to me to listen to the pastor? To renounce Sebastian and my unnatural urges? But in truth, my mom's smile was one of pride. My mother has no idea that her 14-year-old daughter is going to hell. I sit there in silence, wishing I could disappear, my soul feeling dejected. The simmer inside me continues to rise. I remember things inside, these feelings. It would start around 6th and 7th grade. The fear I held for all the things I couldn't understand. For one, I did not know why my body was doing what it was doing. The tingling down there, racing heart when soft beauty was near. And two, I didn't think those I admired would think too kindly of these devious feelings. Certainly not my pastor. I remember that first time I heard my pastor belt his fiery sermon from a relic in old mahogany wooden pulpit. Words spewed through the congregation with the aim to cast demons through the depths of hell. The pastor uttered, "The unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God." A sea of nodding approval waved in unison all around me. Even I unconsciously mimicked the gesture. I didn't want to be cast to hell. I didn't want to burn. The terror of it was fire in its own right. But I couldn't control Sebastian, who represented my internal desires and masculine energy. Sebastian was to me like heads on a two-sided coin. The more I suppressed him, the more Sebastian woke and inserted himself in unexpected situations. I remember in class, my teacher walked to my desk and leaned in to look at my written work. I'd be struck by her softness of her hair, curvature of her nose, and lips. And then, no matter what I did, Sebastian would appear alive and alert as soon as the feelings came. Feelings that make you sweat, stutter, and your heart race. The one only woman could bring to me. The feelings, the urges, the desire for unnameable things never really went away. Instead, like the disease that the pastor swears they are, the feelings seemed to multiply. They moved on their own free will, as they please, with no help or fight from me. Like the time I meet my 9th grade math tutor, I'm called down to the living room by my mother and temporarily freeze at the door when I see her. When she shakes my hand, that feeling, that overwhelming, indescribable feeling, comes over me again. My hand is tingling and prompts me to quickly snatch it back. I don't remember any of the math she tries to teach me, but I do remember how she looks when she calls for a break and wanders over to her fireplace, her fingers skimming a family picture, and she stops as she comes across the one I hate the most. It is a picture of me standing by myself in a white dress with my hair free-flowing. She asks me if it's really me. I nod yes and quickly set it down so she couldn't see it anymore. She's perceptive, and Sebastian is there. You don't like that picture, huh? As she looks me up and down, taking in my baggy joggers, my hoodie, and sneakers. Well, you look nice. Is this your style? For the first time, I felt seen. I nod. Yeah. That feeling is everywhere again. It's my 14th birthday. My mom invited me to go shopping with her. At this time, I was very close to my mom and loved being around her. This invitation was one I was excited about. We went to the department store and Mom immediately beelined to the dresses in the teen department. I remember my hesitation, the thought that maybe this was a bad idea. I shouldn't have agreed to this. Should have requested something else for my birthday. But then my mother called me out. She flashed a dress across my front and smiled broadly. See? What Look how nice. My stomach rolled. Instinctively, I pulled away from the dress and looked at the ground. I told her I didn't like it. She agreed. Too many flowers. She knew I didn't like flowers. She immediately began searching again. There were more racks and endless amounts of racks. The frustration was building in my chest, spilling down my limbs until they were numb like they were falling asleep. It grew with each new dress she lifted and considered. My mom was so wrapped up in finding the perfect dress. She didn't notice me, so I walked away. Drawn to the dark shirts and oversized jeans in the men's department. The relief was immediate. I was in my element, surrounded by so many wardrobe choices that vividly expressed me to the detail. After grabbing an outfit, I headed back, satisfied. Hey, Ma, this is what I want to wear for my birthday. Her eyes seared deeply across the clothes I held and darted back to me. Her expression had shifted entirely. Narrowed eyes and clenched teeth. She snatched them away and scoffed at me under her breath. What do you want to be, a boy? Huh? Are you gay? I felt like the onlookers of shoppers and the entire mall stopped and stared in our direction. We walked out of the mall without purchasing any clothes. The ride back home, silent. The pain at her accusation stung, but it didn't boil over. It was just another log in the fire pit, grazing the simmer.
Tensions continue.
LAPD on.
Not guilty.
We are seeing droves of looters swarm shops along the streets of LA. Fire plumes are everywhere across the city. My dad turns the radio on and R&B singer Sam Cooke belts, "A change is going to come." We are silent as we ride out onto my neighborhood street and then turn onto Manchester and Van Ness Boulevard. There are people everywhere, running in the street, jumping through cracked windows into the stores, and store owners and families crying, shouting, screaming. Fire sirens are everywhere. It was like the sounds were coming from every direction, all around me, from inside of me. We are on fire, everywhere. Fire in blazing rows of buildings, blocks away from my dad's office building. The ambulances and the fire trucks seemed to be barreling down the road toward the flames, but they were behind us, and no direction seemed better than the other. When we arrived at my dad's office, he pulled into the driveway and stomps on the brakes, sending us all forward. My parents both yelled back at me, "Stay in the truck. Do not get out." They run inside. Right across the street, there was a corner liquor store where I always go for candy, chips, and soda. This store was owned, like many of the businesses, by Koreans. Every time I visited the older Korean lady, she would always smile and ask how my dad was doing. They were always so nice. He always recognized me and said hello. I pressed against the window and watched them. The Korean family of the store I always visited. This day, there is no laughter or friendliness or waving hello. This day, the woman stands with her family, her kids, and watches their business burn to the ground. She is screaming as crowds of people are running past them in a parking lot. The people move around them as they stand, shouting, screaming, and weeping. There's a loud crash. I jump and look. My attention draws away from the family to see another business has their windows broken. Then my parents run out with boxes of paperwork, binders, paper flying from the tops that they try to hold on to as they race towards me. They throw the boxes into the cab and climb in, panting and checking in on me as they buckle their seatbelts. Everything fast and all at once. As we pull away, I knew that might be the last time I see my dad's office building. I stare at the big 5x10 board sign that read Potter's Plumbing. My dad built that business from scratch. Today, I blew up. Pilgrim is a private school that sits in the heart of Los Angeles, near Mid-Wilshire District. I attend the 9th grade there, and despite the eclectic mix of student diversity reflective of the larger LA area, it's not a place where I find people like me. There are multiple groups: urban kids, rich Hollywood kids, emo kids, and the classics of science, tech, and video culture geeks. I didn't fit in with any of the groups. All alone, team me. Just me and Sebastian, half of us trapped in a box at any given moment. I didn't enjoy going to Pilgrim. I didn't enjoy that my main bullies are the kids of the parents that drive me to school every morning. It's like willingly walking into the fire and knowing that the challenge wasn't getting burned, but not getting burnt too much. Shit is maddening. I wish I could throw the whole experience away. Today, I'm doing a good job of ignoring the bullies in question, even cramped in the car together as we are. I spent the entire weekend sleeping, was sluggish from it, even though it was only Monday, and I had a whole week ahead of me. The usual 30-minute drive is quiet. I rode in silence, ignoring everyone and everything around me. As we turn off Wilshire Boulevard onto 6th Street and pull into the school grounds, my stomach turns. Every day is an adventure, and it usually was a day of endless taunts, teasing about my skin, my hair, or my boyish nature, and mostly because I didn't know how to push back. I'm too cowardly. Most of the time, I would escape this mental anguish during practice and basketball games. But the pressure has built up to a point that my mind was too consumed to focus on playing. I'd often space out, which leads to the coach placing me on the bench. The teasing and taunts are building trauma that comprises years of jeers, laughs, bruises, all for me. I am halfway through the school year, and I just want it all to end. It's just too much, and eventually the pressure of it all causes me to blow. The blow up with my mother in the mall, the constant pressure of keeping my sexual feelings under wraps, the pain I feel in the classroom, in the hallway, in the locker room, with the neighborhood kids. Shit is everywhere. I finally had enough. So when the laughter begins and classes stay, I curse out my bullies and I storm out the classroom. The burst comes out of nowhere. I exerted a fireball, consumed pure emotion, anger, frustration towards my bullies. They got it all. My feelings from 12 when I was on the playground, remember that? My feelings when my mom humiliated me in the mall, yeah. My feelings when the pastor scared me about going to hell, I gave it all to them. And anyone that will listen, leave me the fuck alone. Then I raced to the school grounds, completely leaving. This time, I would do what I thought so much to do. I had had enough. The droves of looters are now setting businesses on fire. We have lost control. Rodney King was all of us. And our emotions in that moment of the acquittal verdict just exploded. I guess when you take the lashings over and over again, you get tired. You get to a point where you are just simmering inside from all the letdowns, the heaviness of it all. And to see Rodney King on the black pavement getting kicked and pummeled with batons, begging for it all to stop. To see each desperate plea met with a greater blow, a blow to the head or the spine. To see the humanity stripped away. The pain becomes unbearable, suffocating, immobilizing, just like Rodney King as he lay there motionless. Walking along Wilshire Boulevard, I am captive to the impulsive and sinister inner voice in my head. The taunting of my classmates faded, but only to be replaced by all the memories I tried to repress. All of the hurtful events in my past played over and over and over again. sinister voice firmly reminded me that I was not good enough, that I was an abomination and would go to hell, that I was a major disappointment to my mom. Just louder and louder, sinister voice raising until it was all I can think and feel and breathe. It promised relief. Do it if you want peace. I promise it'll make everything better. The voice was sure and my head was swimming, and so I stepped off the curb. A moment where I glanced at the ongoing traffic and then I just kept walking. I didn't consider or care if it was meant to be, so be it. A car swerves past me and honks. What the hell are you doing? The air clears and I wake from my fog. I hurriedly run to the other side of the street. I walk to the first place I could find, an empty Chinese restaurant, and sit down. For hours, I just sit there, numb, defeated, empty. Even the waiters didn't care and ignore me. Eventually, I walked back to school. I slipped back into my next class and remained silent. No one even notices that I was gone. And on that ride share with my bullies, headed home, I stare out the window. As I pass the street corner where I blinked at my own life, I close my eyes. Panic overcomes me. I'm ashamed to think that I wanted to take my life and what that would have done to my mother, my family. So I remained silent all the way home. I just want this day to end. Maybe tomorrow will be different.
Even at 14, I got it. I understood the pressures had built over the years, and this day, we exploded. We released every hurtful encounter and experience exchanged between our communities and theirs. I knew it was deeper than Rodney King. It was about our survival in this city, this state, this country. We just wanted peace. But more importantly, we wanted inclusion and acceptance within the broader LA community. Hell, America for that matter. I was no different. I also wanted acceptance and understanding from those in my world, my parents, my pastor, and my community. But then I realized others could never give me what I was unable to give myself.
The following is an excerpt from episode 3 of Crack This Shit Open.
But I think at this point, I'm just okay with just where it is, right? It's just kind of, you are where you are. So let's focus on something that you can control. Don't lose the ability to experience and grow in other facets of your life because you're so hamstrung on you didn't get what you wanted. Be happy, embrace, who you are.
Downward Spiral was a low point in my young life, but with time, I learned to hold the flames without being burnt, grow to control my emotions and ride the bumps in my life a little easier. Stay tuned for episode 3, Accepting Me for Me.
Crack This Shit Open is narrated and produced by Shay Potter. Editing on this episode from Chelsea Sutton and Shay Potter. Emma Kennedy is our storytelling editor. Sound design and mix by Zach Hahn. Music in this episode is Escaping Forever and Majestic by Michael Vignola. Whisper's Piano Trap Beat by Curtis Harris. Our theme song is by Blue Dot Session. Please check out more at our website, ShaylaDPottermedia.com. That's ShaylaDPottermedia.com. Crack This Shit Open is owned by Be Better Media Productions Company.